Morning, Dave Adams here. Just going to work. I've been doing some reading. I say reading, but what I really mean is I listen to audiobooks on the way to work. I've been going through Creativity by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Now, if you don't know who he is, he's the guy that wrote the book on flow. Flow, that concept of when you get into a moment, you're so encapsulated by the moment that it's almost like time stops meaning anything. It's like things can just jump, you know, like you can just go through whole periods and sections of work. And he talks about flow as being a connection between challenge and work and creativity. And there's a whole list of things in terms of flow. But his book on creativity is really an exploration or an investigation into what makes creative individuals. He he researches. He looks at a whole bunch of contemporaries on who have made creative contribution to their community. And in fact, one of the things he did specifically was he only looked at people over the age of 60 because he sort of one of the things he clarifies creativity as being is that it must be accepted by a domain. So he talks about you must have recognition for your contribution and it must be significant over time. So look in terms of that, why he looks at older people is that the expectation is that they've made a contribution, that they've made a change to the domain, and that domain might be science, education, the arts, anything like that. And it's made a significant contribution over time, so they've been able to outlast it or live through that change. I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors in it. I'm really just still trying to wrap my head around it. It's quite a big process, but it's significantly. I mean, the book itself is primarily interviews with these creative individuals, how they think and operate, and trying to draw conclusions or some sort of understanding. It's not a how-to guide. It's a well, what can be done? What sort of things do they do? How can we learn from their life, sort of thing. Um, However, he talks the difference between big C, little c. So little c creativity is those people in our lives who do some level of like they think creatively or we acknowledge them as being creative. But the big C is the ones who have made the change, made some significant change to the domain, such as science or education. They have to be acknowledged by the experts in that field. So I could think creatively in science, but not being a scientist, not having any recognition or acknowledgement from anyone in the scientific field, technically means I'm not big C creative. So it's kind of funny because he talks also about the implications of that as being that you could be creative like Van Gogh, who was creative, we say, but we've only acknowledged him since his death. So he even talks about the sort of uh, problem of during his lifetime he wasn't creative, but now that he's dead and we acknowledge his stuff, all of a sudden he's creative. So was he actually creative beforehand and just not acknowledged, or can you be creative and not acknowledged? And I think the side he falls down on is no, is that the only time your creativity you're considered big C creative is when you have that acknowledgement. And that means some people could fall out of creativity too. Like they could be considered creative and then suddenly, oh, no longer considered creative. So I don't know. It's an interesting field of study, but I've really been trying to think about, well, how would I see that in board games today? And maybe I think this might be worth an article once I really wrap my head around this creativity issue. But who in the industry has really transformed the industry significantly in ways that matter, who've made a contribution to the field that's acknowledged by the field? And the sorts of people I've come up with so far is Friedman Fries. I mean, his 504 was not. I mean, I haven't. I'm still trying to find a version copy to play, but it kind of looks like 504 mediocre games. But the concept is amazing. Like the idea of trying to write a rule set that could cover 504 games just by, flick and pick, and you've got a game which can transform over time. Like just the concept that he went in with, and he even said himself, he just wanted to play with this idea and see if he could do it. And it wasn't about trying. I don't think it was about trying to create this blockbuster game that was going to be the most fun game of the planet. It wasn't going to reach number one on Game Board Geek. However, he really wanted to play with the ideas, and I think that's why I see him as Big C Creative, is that he has made significant contributions over time. His games have had an impact, and stuff like this really pushes us into the boundaries of thinking around the domain of board game design. Other than that, I mean, I want to say, Rob Davio for the Legacy system, which I think is a huge creative leap in terms of storytelling and board game design. Um, I would probably put Antoine Bowser up there. You see, but people like Matt Leacock, I mean, I'd put Antoine Bowser up there because he's made several significant games with right developing systems of play. The question is whether he's created enough mechanics which have been adapted by the games, and I don't know. I would put him in the Big C Creative, even though he's still quite young and still got a lot of contribution. Maybe even Eric Lang. But there's got to be a difference between people who make good games, like Eric Lang might be one of them. I haven't yet decided. Even like Matt Leacock, who I think makes good games, but is he creative, innovative? Is he Big C Creative? I'm not. I'm not really willing to go there just yet with Matt Leacock, and it's tough. Like I'm really trying to work through, well, what significant, what's changed the domain. That's a really hard one. I think this is probably worth an article at some point. I'm going to have to write something about this. I'm just going to have to try and pull my ideas together and try and work out, really make sense of it. Because I think there's some significant games over time which would matter. But what about the designers? Which are the significant designers that really changed the domain and made that difference? I don't know. What are your thoughts? I'd love some inspiration on this, some ideas of why and who and what. Great to get you thinking on this. Anyway, I'm Dave Adams, and I'm just thinking out loud. See ya.